Welcome to a new episode of The Inside Rip. Today's guest, Matt Worley, aka Slabnomics, who took the time to break down the economics of the PSA 9. Is it dead? We talked through it. Enjoy today's episode. The biggest thing I just want to say, right? What we want from you is to have the PSA 9 for Dummies version, because you had already done a fantastic job at breaking down the PSA 9 and how it's dead, but we're going to get into that. And so we just want to get a deeper dive of what you've done. But again, what you've done, we're going to put a link in the episode so people can also go into it. If they're like, man, Matt's got a lot to say on this. We want to learn some more. But before we get into it, we want to get into your background. What did you do to come up with this thesis that we're about to talk about? What is your background that gives you the credibility to go, this is why we should believe Matt?
Absolutely. I started out in finance in my career, and I didn't do that because I went to school for it. I did it because I was just interested in it. I got out with a history degree and didn't know what to do with that. So I looked around for things and I started writing some stock articles and kind of moonlighting in that way. And I just developed a passion for finance and how it works. It makes sense. It's all math driven, and I like things that make sense. So I have a career in banking, FX trading. I did high net worth account management for those that needed to transfer in and out of different currencies. And I did some lending as well during COVID, actually processed PPP loans. So my finance background is super broad. And when I got into sports cards, I looked around for podcasts that were going to have some kind of relevance to the things that I like to listen to and look at. I'm used to those financial metrics, and I didn't really see any of that. So that's the origin story of Slabnomics. And ever since I started about 10 months ago, I've been just finding things that interest me, rabbit holes I want to go down. I would go down those, and wherever they brought me out, wherever the data pointed me towards, I would just talk about that and make content on it.
So you went from, I am in finance, I have this history degree, I'm not sure what to do with. This is all during the pandemic era, and then you floated your way on to doing extensive research in your free time, and then you're like, my gosh, I'm going to write a history piece on PSA, and then was all of a sudden the 9, how did that 9 conversation come from the history of PSA? What was it that was standing out to you about the 9? Did you see one year to another year, all of a sudden the value change?
Well, what I found was that there were 5 million PSA 10s graded from 1991 to 2019. 5 million. So in 28 years, we got 5 million. And then I saw from 2020 to 2025, there were 31 million added. So really what I found looking through the history of PSA was this explosion that happened during COVID caused the grading populations of PSA 10s to explode. And so I found that it really wasn't a matter of condition so much anymore as the supply was just so overpopulated that now we have this weird thing where a PSA 10 doesn't really stand for perfect condition anymore. It just stands for the best out of the population, if that makes sense. But I think when we look at collectors and those that are investing for long term, gonna throw it into a shoebox maybe and pick it up in 20 years, they're thinking about how many cards are there. And that classification kind of breaks it down. If you have 1,000 PSA 10s, 1,000 perfect cards, right? That's a little bit different than when you look at the vintage cards, say the Topps baseball cards, where you might have 5 PSA 10s. So I think PSA 10 is still the perfect condition, but what it stands for the market has changed in ultramodern. There's just too many PSA 10s now. That's what I really believe in ultramodern.
So because people have learned they should take care of their cards more and get them graded, was this just oh my God, the card care has increased, and 2, because we used to keep them in binders, right? When you collected cards as a kid, it was throw them in a binder, close up the book, you go through it every now and then. People would I remember as a kid, I would take the cards out depending on who was playing what game and be like, oh, okay, this is the starting lineup for the Yankees today. And I have all the cards listed, but that's me taking a card out, putting it back in as a kid with dirty pizza hands, fingers, whatever, right? But so now people, like, what is it that has changed in the hobby that it has made it where it's like, my goodness, there's so many stinking 10s out there.
Yeah, I mean, people now know from an early age you got to grade that thing. So grading is part of the hobby, whereas it wasn't before 1991. You know, PSA started in 1991 with their grading services. Beckett started their grading in 1999. So up until that point, for 80 years in baseball card collecting, really, people weren't grading them. It was just, I think this card looks good. It's centered. Centering was always the big thing in vintage. And now people know how to take care of them. Printing quality has gone up a lot. So, you know, I feel like they could have perfect cards all the time if they really wanted to. It almost seems like the centering issues now are because they want to kind of keep that disparity between grades. So just a different age.
Does finance give you an edge in the market that maybe more institutionally financial educated people should really be like, Matt's onto something? All of our friends in finance should, you know, those in investment banking should look at the hobby for alternative assets.
Man, I hope so. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. But I think math is math. And whenever someone starts telling me a story about something, they say, you should look into these boxes that are sealed, or you should look into this person's card, or et cetera. I'll ask, what's the math on it? Mm-hmm. Which means, like, what's the population that we're looking at? How many other rookie cards were there? And these things, really having that financial background means that I have that mode of thinking where I'm always thinking about comparing it to other things, right? And you look at stock market analysis, you look at price to earnings ratios, and that lets you compare how profitable that company is, maybe compared to its peers, other companies in that industry. And you can do the same thing, I think, in cards. This certain rookie, this LeBron James 2003 Topps Chrome rookie, we can compare that to Michael Jordan's 1986 Fleer rookie if we look at the population counts and kind of understand the whole universe surrounding it, I think. So that's what finance, I think, empowers us to do.
How do you feel about people in sports considering cards in their alternative assets? Because there is some serious money being spent. There are risks being made. And I ask that with also the modern card in mind, because I think vintage, right, there's less of them. So that makes more sense why that would be an alternative asset. There's only one, right? A Honus Wagner, Babe Ruth, right? Ain't that many. Picasso has a limited amount of paintings. So does Babe Ruth, right? That makes more sense for vintage. But more focusing this question on the modern card market and how you feel about, is this a crazy means of an investment portfolio?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe that the market right now is really hot for sports cards?
Yes.
Yeah. I definitely felt that same thing in 2025. And when we ended it, I decided I wanted to qualify that or quantify it, really.
Yeah.
I wanted to find out how much this thing had really grown. Do we need to pump the brakes on this thing? Do we need to really make sure we're not in a bubble? A lot of people started doomsdaying this kind of stuff, like, be careful, everything's about to fall. So I wanted to make sure that we were still on the level with things. And what I found looking at the numbers through Card Ladder's indexes, they have so much information. Love Card Ladder and what they do. They have different indexes for different card values. So they have a high-end index, which is cards over $5,000, a mid-end index, which is $500 to $5,000, and a low-end, which is under $500.
Okay.
And I found that 2025 was a great, great year for the high-end market, but the low-end market hadn't even moved. That's what was crazy. So the low end was at 43% of all-time highs of COVID, but the high end was at 96% of those COVID highs.
Wow.
So I think we've had a bifurcation, so a splitting off of two different paths between these two different card markets of high end and low end now. The collector's market is still not really popping off that much, but high end, where people are really treating these like alternate assets, that's where we saw massive gains in 2025. And I expect those to continue in 2026 because more and more millionaires are being made every day with AI. More money is floating around. And that means that those people want to find assets to put that money into. They don't want to keep it in cash.
Right.
So we start seeing fine art go up. We start seeing wine go up. And that's what high-end cards are like, fine art and wine.
I love that comparison. All right, let's get into it. You famously said PSA 9 is dead. There is a universal feel though, Matt, right? You send a card, you get it graded, you get that 9 back, and my God, you are sad. You are disappointed because you did not get that perfect grade. And you're here to tell us like we should even feel worse when we get that card back.
Throw it in the trash. No, it's
You're done.
Serena, it's different, right? Like in 2020, if you got a 9 a lot of times, you'd be really happy with that.
Yeah.
But what a 9 stands for now, as you said there, is kind of failure, sadness. Oh man, I got the 9, didn't get the 10. Sometimes you randomly get a 6. Sometimes your whole order gets 6s. But I think the 9 is dead in these cards that don't really have a huge market. And I think about it a lot, like which of these cards are really going to last? You know, there's so many parallels now. I think over 80 parallels in some of the modern Topps Chrome or Prism sets. And the snake skin, the zebra, the tiger, like how do you even value so many different parallels? And when you look at all the value, like the market cap of all of those cards together, there's so much money in there. And I think over time, that's all going to selectively come down into investable assets. I think certain assets are going to keep going up in sports cards, and a lot of them are just going to kind of filter down. And you see that when cards first come out. So sorry to go on a little tangent there.
No,
but
please.
The reason I bring that up is because that's also relevant for PSA 9s.
Okay.
If you have someone's second year card, for instance, not the rookie card, because rookie card market is massive, but second year card, it's pretty thin. It's pretty illiquid. And the values for them, even for GOATs like LeBron or Messi, just are a tiny infinitesimal part of their rookie market. PSA 9s, I don't think are going to gain in value over long periods of time for most cards. 95% of cards, maybe more.
Okay.
Because I don't think those are going to be looked at as appreciating assets that are going to gain in market share and more people wanting the 9s. I think the 10s will for most cards, but 9s are just kind of not throwaway, but whenever I get a 9, I just sell it.
Okay.
Because I think long term, it's kind of going down.
I heard you kind of bring up like if there's so many parallels or like even second years, like my God, you get a LeBron James card, but you're like, well, it's not his rookie card. Are those also assets that you're like, sell it, like don't buy it because they kind of sit in that same bucket of they're just not worthy?
It's a great question, Serena. And I think it really comes down to the rarity of the card.
Okay.
That's where this PSA 9 is actually going to be valued in something like a gold, right?
Okay.
Because there's 10 of them or there's 50 of them, depending on which set you're working with. And I think things like gold, there's a reason why it's golds and silvers or golds and refractors if it's Topps. There's a reason why those are still universally loved and held in high demand. And I think that's because as human beings, it's in us to love silver and gold. Like we've been doing it for our entire evolutionary chain.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I think for those and for rare parallels like blacks out of 10, reds out of 5, PSA 9s are still, if there's only 5 of them, maybe there's 2 PSA 10s and 3 PSA 9s.
Okay.
You're talking about a totally different deal than if you have a silver that has 10,000 PSA 10s and 20,000 PSA 9s.
Okay.
So you have to think about the market. You have to think about the rarity of the card and if more and more people are going to want that specific card.
Okay.
It's weird because almost every card or every player has their own specific market that may grow or may fall.
One PSA 9 is very valuable because there aren't any others, right? So pop value
Right.
and then also time period, you're saying are the two most important factors in a PSA 9 being valuable, or something that you're like, sell it?
I would say the population is the biggest thing.
Okay.
The population is key. What I found in my findings for the gem rate discussion and what I put into that content for that PSA 9 is dead post was that if the gem rate is under 30%, then a PSA 9 is actually really valuable. So that's a good rule of thumb or number to have in your head when you're looking at these cards. And most ultra modern, the gem rate is much higher than that, 75, 80% a lot of times.
Okay, which makes sense because we kind of talked about that earlier. I think you've touched on it briefly, but could you give us any nooks in the space? You kind of touched on it, but maybe elaborate. If you have a PSA 9, like the value would increase, like we shouldn't sell it, right? This doesn't have to be necessarily a set rule for any PSA 9, right, Matt?
Yeah, I would say that rookie cards are what you should pay attention to.
Okay.
Nines and rookies are usually going to be much better at holding their value.
Okay.
But any second year, third year cards, I think of is a card iconic. If you think of a card and you're like thinking of a player, think of some cards that go with that player. A lot of times they're not rookie cards. Most of the time they are. But look at LeBron when he did the Kobe dunk.
Yeah.
I think 2019 maybe. That's an iconic card. Or the chalk toss for LeBron. LeBron has some really cool iconic cards. I think those, if you have nines, are going to continue to rise in value because if something's iconic, it's timeless. And if it's timeless, the more people come into the hobby, the more people are going to find that card and want it and want to have like a piece of that timelessness. So rookies and iconic cards are where PSA 9s are going to be good for you in ultra modern. Those are the exceptions.
Matt, it seems like you discovered something that is just based on human behavior, right? Consumers grade cards. Like we are grading cards more than ever because we understand that cards are an investment, not just people who are collecting, but people who are getting into the hobby now with people making more money, AI existing now. They're like, I'm going to grade this card. I'm going to take care of it. That's the whole reason for this. This is like the catalyst that started this problem, isn't it, Matt?
I think it's a big part of it. And I think the demand has changed, Serena. I think people are changing. And if you look at the young people, a lot of them are valuing experiences more than traditional asset classes. I don't think a lot of them are investing in IBM and Dell like we used to in the day. I think they want experiences, and I think cards actually speak to that. When I talked about the portals, we're talking about something really cool that happened. A lot of memories are tied up in that, and a lot of feelings and emotions are tied up in that. So, yeah, grading was a big part of creating the market that we have today, and it's a huge part of it. But I also think on the demand side, people are changing. And when you think about where that's headed, I think that gives you some good clues as to things you might look to invest in.
Yeah, experience is everything because during the pandemic, when everything shut down, we lacked all the experience. People went in their closets to see, hey, do I have any money in this? And the hobby boomed. But then what has kept it here is, right, I don't want stock in IBM. That is lame. That might be fun, but if someone is spending money already, then I don't need that. I've got my IBM, but I want, when LeBron does his chalk toss that's iconic in Cleveland, my goodness, I want that memory and I can hold it and also then have money that I don't, like I can put cash away, right? That's really, my God, human behavior has completely changed over the past 5-6 years.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up COVID because COVID was different than today even. When I was doing that whole study of what 2025 looked like and how all-time highs were being made in the high end, whereas low end was lagging, it was the opposite in COVID. Everything flowed up through the low end. If you remember during COVID, everybody was buying like base cards and base cards went to the moon. Luka Doncic rookies base were going nuts. And it flowed up to the high end after that. Whereas now it's the opposite. It's all high end. I think it's going to filter down into the low end when more and more people get into it this year.
Okay.
But it's just really interesting to think about how things have changed even in 5 years.
Okay, so you've given us all this information, which has been really helpful. And so I want to kind of push it forward, right? Like, so based on all this information you shared with us, can you walk us through the steps of when we come across what we believe is a good PSA 9 card? Like, do you either own it, and you want to figure out what to do with it, or you already own it, or you want to own it, and then you want to figure out how much to spend, right? How much you want to buy. I'm using a very popular card in these parts, a Josh Allen. I'm going to click on this link here on eBay. A 2018 Josh Allen Don Russ rated rookie is a PSA 9. It's on eBay as of April 7th, 2026 for $150. What are the steps? What am I looking for? Are there resources? Are you like turn away, or because of the year you're like, yeah, this is valuable? Take us through what we should do.
All right. I'm going to keep from ADHDing my way through a bunch of different things. I'll try and stay focused here. The first thing I would think about is I would go to use Card Ladder or Market Movers, whichever. They have both great databases, and find out what the price history has looked like.
Okay.
So you're going to see there, look through a couple sales. Has it been pretty steady? Have the sales been shooting up? Have they been drifting down?
Okay.
You can also see, second thing, population reports there.
Right.
So should be able to see PSA 9 population. I don't know what it is offhand. I don't know if you have that up.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but might as well make this fun. Okay, 2018 card insights from PSA. Mint 9, there are 6,449 nines, and there are 10,569 tens of this card.
Okay.
So nines are 6,449.
So the interesting thing there, I've looked at a lot of population reports.
Okay.
And do you know offhand what people usually put as the premium between a 9 and a 10? Like, how much multiplier is it to go from a 9 to a 10?
I don't know.
For this card.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I mean, we'll work through this. No, I don't know.
I think most people would say it's like 2 to 2.5 times.
Okay.
And the interesting thing there in that population report that you just brought up, the ratio from 9s to 10s was about 6,000 change to 10,000 change, is about 2.5 times.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So in modern cards, that's actually pretty fair to look at a 2.5 times multiple. And if you're looking at different cards with different 9 to 10 ratios, I think that multiple expands. If there's 1,000 PSA 9s, but there's only 10 PSA 10s, it's not going to be 2.5 times to get that 10. It's going to be 10x, maybe more.
Got it.
So just an interesting note there with that. So you said there's over 6,000 PSA 9s. We have about 10,000 PSA 10s. So when I'm looking at that, I'm like, there are so many PSA 10s for this specific card. And I know there's a few other different Josh Allen rookies. Like you can get the optic version. You can get the optic hollow, of course. So for me, I'd be thinking, all right, if I have $160, is this the best investment vehicle for my $160? So that's kind of the third thing that I'm looking at. Taking a step back, saying, what's the purpose of me buying this card? What's my timeline? What's the catalyst that I think is going on that I'm buying this for? Let's say I think Josh Allen is going to win the Super Bowl this next year. Then I'm like, okay, I have my catalyst and I have my time frame. I'm probably going to want to look to sell that card in December, maybe January when playoffs are heating up. So I know I'm putting $160 in today. I expect, my next question is, how much do I then expect it to be in January?
Yes.
Well, if there's so much population on this and there's so many PSA 10s, I think the demand's first going to spike in the PSA 10s.
Right.
And then I think of it as like a cascading effect. So it first pops off in the PSA 10s, the people that can afford and want to go through the PSA 10s are going to buy those and go through that cycle. If they can't afford it, or there's not enough available in the 10s, then I think demand shifts down into the 9s.
Okay.
And we see that a lot in the hobby. Like a certain thing will pop off, maybe a certain card of a certain player. When Shai Alexander was going through his MVP season, the demand started first in his rookies and like his higher grade rookies, his silvers, the golds, the big ones. And then it kind of drifted down into other ones and into other sets. And I think that happens 10 to 9 as well. So I'd be thinking to myself, I'm putting $160 in, maybe enough demand goes off on this that it goes up to $220.
Okay.
You also have to think about your selling fees, which are usually going to be 15%. So I mentally shave that off. So at the end of the day, I might make $30, $40 on this card if everything goes right.
Right.
So then thinking like that, it's like, do I want to put the capital in for 6, 7, 9 months, whatever it is? And is this the card to do it? So me specifically, I would probably move into a different card that I think is more iconic. But that is my thought process for going through that specific card. When I first started out, I probably would have just bought that card. I just like threw money everywhere. But I've gotten more and more refined in thinking of what has to happen for me to get to my goal. What is my goal?
Yeah.
What is my timeline? And then is this the best use of that $160? Because there's millions of cards that you can buy.
The pop is the key, right? How many cards that exist is the key, and the thing that I think any person that either wants to get into the hobby, wants to collect because they're a fan of the Packers and or Josh Allen or whoever, collecting is one thing. I think everyone just loves that card. It's iconic. But if there's 10,000 cards available, it doesn't make sense for you to have a lower graded card of his when the rest of those are going to go through first. You want a better card for your bang for your buck.
Everybody and their mother, Serena, is going to be selling their PSA 10s.
Yes.
So there will be so much supply out there that demand isn't really going to trickle down into the 9s for that specific card. That's what I would forecast.
The pop, right. If the pop for a 10 is 10 or 20, then you're saying, okay, we can reevaluate the 9 because that value is going to trickle down a lot faster. But if there's more
100%.
pop 10s than not, then that's the key. How important is liquidity?
Liquidity is pretty much everything in a market like this, because we're dealing with things that aren't needed. You don't need these cards. So liquidity, there's a few different types of liquidity, and people usually only talk about the first liquidity, which is how much supply there is out there. In this case, 10,000 PSA 10s. There's also like selling liquidity. How much is it being put onto the market? How often? And that's usually a function of the other one. But all of it is to say, if a card sells all the time, then people are going to be more confident spending the money in it. They look it up in Card Ladder. They see it sold yesterday at this price. It's going to be easier for you to put it up at that price or slightly above, and someone has high confidence to buy it. In a low liquid market, which is what I deal in, soccer, some of the cards that I have haven't sold in a year or two. So people have a hard time, there's friction being able to properly value that card. And the cool thing about liquidity, Serena, is it can work for you or against you in that way. Because if it hasn't sold for a year and a half, there's more finagling you can do on that price as a seller. I can just sit there and be like, I think it's worth 4x what it was a year and a half ago. And people can't really argue it because there's no sale from yesterday to say that I'm wrong. And then the other side, it's probably going to take me a long time to sell that because I have to find the perfect person that's going to agree with me and see that as like a proper value. So a double-edged sword in liquidity, but if you have the right cards, rare cards, iconic cards, then that lack of liquidity can actually be a boon for you.
Makes sense, especially with the World Cup coming up. It would make sense that people are trying to now buy soccer cards if you already have them. At some point, the same rule of thumb you use for Josh Allen, right? We're expecting Josh to make it to the playoffs, and hopefully win a Super Bowl within the next 2-3 years. The same goes with soccer, is my assumption, right? Well, in the next 2-3 years, soccer is now we're immersed in it, hosting the World Cup. Is that kind of the sense that you have?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's even cooler because I'm going to get nerdy with you guys and throw some numbers at you.
Please.
52% of the sports card resale market is in America. 52%.
Okay.
Soccer is the most popular sport everywhere but America. So in America, it's fourth in terms of like the card market size.
Mm-hmm.
It's baseball, basketball, and football. Basketball, I would say above football. And then soccer down here at like 5% of the market share.
Okay.
So I think what's going to happen, and I'm no Nostradamus here, I have no crystal ball, but I think all of the internationals are going to come to America to see the World Cup. There's going to be so much energy, so much hype around it. Now they're going to be exposed to the card market. Everybody's going to be showing them their cards here in America. So you're going to get nice effect where they're going to get into cards. And then at the same time, the Americans, I think, are going to get a little bit more into soccer. So they're going to like help each other grow the soccer market at the same time as the World Cup is going on. So in 2 or 3 months, we'll see if I'm absolutely wrong and just a chucklehead, or we're going to see if the past year and a half that I've been building towards is at least directionally right.
How fun. Okay. Well, you look like Nostradamus in that lovely, ambiguous room. What else are you working on? Like, what is the next piece that you're kind of doing research in? If you can share, and if you can't, be like, Serena, go away. I'll see you later.
No, I'd love to share. I started my website, slabnomics.com, recently, about a month ago. So all the stuff I'm working on is going to be thrown up on there. I'm adding to it every week. And the thing I'm working on next is to look at how different parallels are valued. So I want to see what's an orange parallel usually compared to a silver. And once we start breaking that out, what's a base compared to a refractor? I already did that. And once you have that kind of mapped out, then you can start to see things that might be undervalued. Let's say if an orange is 5x the price of what a refractor normally is, maybe for this player, I find one that's only at 3x.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I find that on eBay. Say, I think the fair value because of that should be 1,000, but it's only at 600. Well, the market can be wrong longer than I can be solvent. We know that. But I think the math kind of works out. If it's supposed to be 5x, I think on a long time frame, it will go up to that. Like it'll catch up. So that's what I'm going to be working on next, checking out different parallels and evaluating them.
Matt, why do this? Like, this is a lot of time. This is a lot of effort that you make. Is this just for you to be like, well, I wanted to know for my own self? Or are you trying to help people out, you know, learn a space, get into finance side of the hobby?
Yeah, I'd be cheating here, but I'll say both. I have a problem in that I'm insanely curious. And I was like that annoying little kid that was always asking why, like at someone's sleeve, just playing like, why? And that stayed with me. So when I see something and I can't find an answer for it, I go find out what the answer is. And there's so much in cards that doesn't have an answer yet. Like when I said that 2.5x on a 9 to a 10, that's something that I had to like find out because there was kind of rule of thumb around it. Some people would say this, they would say that, but I wanted to find data that led to that. And then on the other side, I think as this hobby grows into a real alternate asset class, I think people want to have real information about what they're buying. And I feel they want to feel good about those purchases and feel that they're making good purchases for their future.
Yeah.
And empowering them to do that is something that I just kind of found my way into. It wasn't the plan. I started Slabnomics because there wasn't a podcast, so I made one. And I'm giving people the data because it wasn't out there yet and I want them to have it. So
I dig it. I appreciate your time. Thank you for educating us and kind of making us smarter investors and or collectors in this space. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys.